Hello, and welcome to today's Trainer Education webinar, Customers for Life, 5 Easy Steps for Turning a Goal into Reality, hosted by HRDQ and presented by Bruce Matza. Before we begin, note that there is a question and answer button located at the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can use this button during the webinar to submit any questions that you have, and then we'll either answer your questions as we receive them, we'll do a Q&A session with Bruce at the end of the presentation, or we'll email after the session if we don't have time for all of the questions. Today's webinar will last approximately 60 minutes, and it will include a brief Q&A session. Do stay tuned at the conclusion of the broadcast for an exclusive offer. My name is Sarah Montgomery, and I will moderate today's webinar. I'm in business development for HRDQ, a publisher of research-based training solutions that improve the performance of individuals, teams, and organizations. Today's presenter is Bruce Matza, a well-known speaker, mentor, and facilitator. He brings a wealth of experience in executive leadership, retention, and customer service. Bruce has over 35 years of experience advising such prominent brands as Harrods of London, Marriott, Walt Disney World, Motorola, Harley-Davidson, and the National Retail Federation, just to name a few. He was a senior executive for 21 years with Neiman Marcus. Bruce is the author of the assessment Becoming a Customer Service Star, initially designed for Walt Disney World. Now in its 3rd edition, the assessment has been used by more than 250,000 customer service professionals around the world. We are pleased to have Bruce share his expertise in customer service with us today. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Bruce.
I'm delighted, and thank you to everyone who's on the line. I am located out here in Las Vegas, Nevada, so I'm on Pacific time, but for some of you, good morning, and for some of you, good afternoon. I would like to share with you some of the issues and opportunities that I've learned dealing with customer satisfaction over the years, and why it led me to author the assessment Becoming a Customer Service Star. And I do look forward to the Q&A at the end and some of the thoughts and ideas that you have during the polling process during the content of this presentation. Let me just share with you that I hope that when you walk away in an hour that you have a good sense from at least my perspective of why we lose customers, and share with you some of the 5 skills that seem to fall into a majority of customer service situations that an individual serving and satisfying customers really needs to be successful. I have some ideas on opportunities to improve customer service and retention. I want to share a few success stories with you along the way. And then to the end of this presentation, we will introduce the assessment Becoming a Customer Service Star that is designed to help you take participants through a process of measuring their individual customer service aptitude, and open it up for questions. I will start off just by sharing with you that only 1% of your customers die. We lose 3% because they move away from your trade area. 13% find someone else to provide the particular products or services. 15% leave because they're dissatisfied with your specific services. And the largest majority, almost 2/3 of the customers that you lose, depart because of feelings of indifference, that we're not staying connected, that we're not ingratiating them, that we're not in some way treating them like guests coming into our home. And so when we start looking about losing customers, the retention of a customer factor really requires a creation of a vision. Customer service is less a program and more a state of mind in an organization. So we're looking to try to create a continuous improvement process, one that allows you to continue to build success upon success and be able to measure that opportunity, encourage feedback from customers, and continue to always look for ways of knowing where you stand and what you can be doing to further satisfy their needs. Retaining current customers is obviously a key. If you're always recruiting customers to replace the ones that you have, that's a major problem. We feel that while customer service is important for everyone, that it is absolutely imperative that you identify and know who your best customers are, and under no circumstances allow a best customer to leave. And then I'm going to show you a way that we have helped organizations actually value a customer in order to be able to measure and get everyone's attention and focus on customer satisfaction. The 5 points of customer service that will come up later in the assessment, but that I really would like to shape this presentation around, talk to the points that you have on the screen. First and foremost, people need to just simply feel good about interacting with customers on a daily basis. They need to find ways of encouraging feedback from those customers. We need people who can respond quickly and timely and with authority to customer problems when they are presented. All of the interaction with a customer needs to be seen not as a transaction, but as an opportunity to develop long-term relationships. And there are opportunities on a daily basis of finding ways of doing more than a customer expects. And when all of these things happen, you have a customer service division that is growing and developing a huge opportunity in your organization. So the first question that I have for you, how do you classify your primary customer base? I'm going to ask Sarah to open up the polling, and just to see what our primary focus is. Are most of your customers face-to-face, mail order, telephone customers, internet customers, or some other form of customer? Terrific. About 80% of you have polled in, and you can see the results on the screen. And we're looking at least over half of you saying that face-to-face customers are the primary customer that you're dealing with. Another quarter of you are indicating that telephone customers are your primary customer. And then we're starting to see a growing number of internet customers. I ask this for several reasons. Number one, while I'm going to talk today to a great degree about the face-to-face customer, since that's where the majority of you are responding, I do want you to know that the increasing number of phone customers and internet customers are important segments in our businesses. And we have a growing number of people that are really exploring how to personalize that experience for that customer that's not face-to-face. In the facilitation guide that goes with the assessment, we spent some time in this third edition trying to really identify if you are focusing on telephone customers or internet customers, how do you create some of these same kinds of experiences and interactions and relationships? Certainly it's a greater challenge when you're not face-to-face with a customer to build a relationship, but therein lies the huge challenge of customer satisfaction. Let's go on. The first dimension of customer satisfaction is feeling positive toward customers. The obvious issues are eye-to-eye contact and smiling and focusing on a customer's needs, obviously asking the customer how they can be of assistance, all those primary ideas on hospitality and immediate interaction with customers. But let me zero in on one specific, and that's the eye-to-eye contact. Years ago, as an executive of Neiman Marcus, I was asked to produce a video that we could share in all of our stores to help our sales staff understand how to identify and how to deter shoplifting. And my video production manager came to me and suggested that since we were located in Dallas, we were pretty close to a prison for women, the Gatesville Prison for Women, just south of Dallas in Gatesville, Texas, and that he could arrange to have us go down and interview convicted shoplifters to determine what their techniques had been and to try to videotape them and edit that tape to share with all of our people. It was a fascinating experience because I had a group of individual women sitting in a small room with me talking about shoplifting, not in any apologetic way, but very proud of their profession They would call their customers in the morning. They would say, Sarah, I'm going to the mall. Do you need anything? And Sarah would say, well, there's a great Liz Claiborne outfit, and I need it in this color and this size. And they would steal by color, by size. And when I asked each of these women what prevented them from successfully shoplifting, the same answer came up over and over again. Great customer service makes us crazy. It drives us out of the store. If somebody comes up and greets us and looks us in the eye, there's a 10 times greater chance of being identified, and we simply go down somewhere else in the mall and steal from someone else. And we suddenly became very aware that great customer service was built around that initial contact of people feeling that they were being recognized by eye-to-eye contact. Years later, when I started advising other organizations after I left Neiman Marcus, I had occasion to work with Macy's, and they were interested in understanding what techniques salespeople could use when there was one person at the register and they had 3 or 4 or 5 customers all queued up waiting to check out. And we recognized that the same skill for a customer who wanted to honestly be served had the same retention effect. That if the salesperson could look beyond the first person in line and say to the second one, I'll be with you in a moment, and at least give them a minimum of eye-to-eye contact. Look at that third customer and say, hi, it'll be a few minutes, and look at the fourth customer and say, I hope you brought your lunch. But make eye-to-eye contact with each of them, that we found that the average customer would wait up to 8 to 10 minutes longer than if they did not have eye-to-eye contact. They would then just leave the merchandise and leave the store. And so eye-to-eye contact served both to retain existing customers or potential customers, as well as deter people who wanted to be dishonest. The eye-to-eye contact skill, if it is not used, is probably eroding your customer service perceptions by 30, 40, 50%. So if you have some people who are just not comfortable at looking the customer in the eye, smiling, talking, creating that happy interaction, that's almost a separate skill set that you need to think about working with them on, because it is absolutely a critical piece of customer satisfaction. Look at this second skill. We are talking about encouraging customer feedback. When we do this assessment, very often, this is one of the lower scored skills. It's not something that people think about. And yet when we survey customers and do focus groups and do all kinds of feedback on customers in terms of what's important or what makes them feel that an organization really values them as a customer, more often than not, some mechanism of customer feedback comes into the discussion. We find that there are any number of ways that organizations create feedback. It can happen with the individual on a face-to-face basis, certainly asking people if they're satisfied with our service. If you have a comment card that someone can fill out, being able to give those to customers and encouraging feedback is a great mechanism, especially if they've had any service disappointments. You learn about them immediately. More often than not, a majority of these come back with compliments to individual staff members, which allows for additional recognition and appreciation. It often gives you a great indication of ways of improving your service, and it demonstrates to customers that you are truly interested in keeping them satisfied and you want the opportunity to serve them again. In some occasions, you can use surveys or comment cards. Customer focus groups have become increasingly successful. Any ways in which you can incentivize your staff to identify problems by reaching out to the customers. On almost every website, we now see this immediate survey come up after a transaction to try to get the customer's feedback, not only to be able to involve the customer in improving that service transaction over the internet, but quite frankly, to ingratiate them into feeling that their opinion is important. I often remember talking to people as they entered a store or a restaurant or a hotel and greeting them as a member of management. And after we did a number of customer focus groups, it dawned on me that the more important experience is not to talk to people when they're walking in, but to talk to them when they're walking out. And so we started encouraging our management team to stand at the door when they were on the selling floor, or they were working a restaurant, or they were working a hotel, or an organization that had a regular customer flow, and talk to people as they're leaving. Did you have a great experience? What more can we do to get you back again? Tell us how your day went. And it was amazing how many people actually enjoyed that experience. We use this as an opportunity with new employees who are not real comfortable with interacting with customers to just simply learn better what that customer's expectation is. Give a new employee a handful of comment cards and let them stand at the door and talk to people as they are leaving and saying, you know, we hope that you had a great experience. What more can we learn to satisfy you on your next visit? And hand them a comment card, especially if it's a self-addressed comment card. Be amazed how many customers will stop and tell a new employee what will make a great customer experience. And it's as good a learning experience as several hours in a training room when it comes to new employees becoming immediately ingratiated with the culture and the expectations that customers have for your organization. Any way in which you can send out email blasts or surveys or comment cards, remember that there's two processes when you're creating a continuous improvement customer service program. Number one is you want to be able to numerically have customers score your service in any number of categories. It can be how quickly they were served, how well they were served, but you want to be able to create a numeric baseline that becomes a standard. If you are surveying people this month, you want to know next month or 6 months from now or next year that you are able to improve on a baseline score. So if the score is on a base of 1 to 10, try to determine, okay, our first set of scores is putting us somewhere in a range of 7.5. The next question becomes to management and to staff, how can you over the next several months move that 7.5 to an 8.0 or an 8.5? And the bottom line is that in a continuous improvement process, you are always looking to figure out how can I quantify customer service and how can we find strategies and ideas to improve it. The survey process and the feedback gives you the mechanism for creating that quantifiable baseline measure. The other thing is that you always want to give customers a qualifiable place to just simply write in comments. And don't allow other members of management to scare away the idea that you're going to get bombarded by a bunch of complaints and problems, because a majority of the comments that come back are positive, and more often than not complimenting specific individuals in your organization for having met and exceeded the customer's expectations. This gives you an opportunity of sharing these success stories, of recognizing these people, of building a continuous improvement process based on recognition. So the feedback process is one that is absolutely imperative to build into your customer service program. The third is responding to problems. Problems are really opportunities, and we've heard this cliche over and over again. But to a great degree, when a customer is complaining to you, they are doing the biggest favor that a customer can share. The reason being that you don't have many customers telling you what's going on. We've got a poll here that we'd like to ask you, and I apologize for putting the answer slide up on the screen before you responded. But take a moment anyway and just simply think of an unhappy customer response that you have encountered over the past several months, but decided not to report to a member of that organization. Doesn't matter why, but I would like you to indicate to us, why would you not report an unhappy customer experience? I think one of the more interesting things from a presenter's point of view on this webinar is to sit quietly and watch your responses show up on my screen. It's actually the only indication that I have that there are people alive and well out there. But in this instance, it looks like about half of you indicated that You didn't complain because you didn't think it would do any good. Another 34% of you said it was too much of a hassle to complain, and about 10% said, I don't know who or how to complain. And then there was about 10% who had some other reason. Good responses. There was a study done called the Technical Assistance Research Program. It was formulated in the late 70s to look at service in different industries and professions and to try to help from a government perspective. It was a White House study conducted to a great degree by graduates of Harvard Business School. And they were looking to try to identify ways of helping different businesses take care of the customer, not because it was a nice thing to do, but because it quantified a bottom line impact to your organization. And when they started asking customers why they did not complain, the categories that you responded were very often exactly why customers said they would not go back and utilize an organization. The TARP study, about 40% of the customers said it was too much of a hassle, 30% said they did not know where or how to complain, and 20% said they didn't think it would do any good. Your numbers are inverted a little bit. A majority of you say it wouldn't do any good. But this, as an American consumer, is where we are. We just simply write off an organization rather than try to help them improve their service. How many times have you been at a restaurant and been disappointed, chose not to tell the waiter or waitress, not to talk to the manager who may or may not walk around and ask how things are going, but we pay the bill and we walk out of that restaurant and we turn to each other and we say, we're not going back. We've written that restaurant off the face of the earth, and then we go out and tell all of our friends and neighbors that that restaurant has either changed ownership or changed the chef or changed the menu or changed the pricing, but it's no longer worth going. And we do everything possible to put that organization out of business. And we do it without ever giving that organization a chance to improve or a chance to resolve the problem to our satisfaction. And that's very much a consumer mentality that your customers have about your organization. And what it tells you is that a very small number of people are ever letting you know that they are having a good experience or a bad experience. Traditionally, the TARP study said that a customer with a good experience would tell 3 to 4 people within a 24-hour period. Customers with a bad experience would stop 12 to 20 people. If it was an online or an internet experience, or if people now can go online to a website and be able to complain about your organization, you can have thousands and thousands of hits about that unhappy experience before you even know about it. People all over the world can be reading about your organization's service failures. And there is a whole new industry that is emerging of organizations that are willing to do nothing but search the internet for unhappy customer comments and experiences about your organization, and then proceed to try to hit as many good experiences on that same internet site to try to push that bad experience comment off the screen. And watch this industry. It is growing at leaps and bounds. What's more important is the fact that because so few people tell you about an unhappy experience, the key is to try to find as many mechanisms to encourage that feedback. We found a group of customers, again in the TARP study, who did not complain. And we asked them, are you going to go back and use that organization's products or services? And about a third of them said yes, they would go back, having never complained, but just simply accepting the bad service. We found another group that complained but did not get satisfaction. Perhaps they filled out a comment card and never heard anything. Maybe they stopped someone who did not feel they had any authority to resolve the complaint. But in any event, they complained and did not receive satisfaction. And we asked them if they would go back. And look at this. There was a 10% improvement. Now, this 10% is fascinating because what that's saying is that even if you don't satisfy a customer's concerns, just by asking for their feedback and doing nothing, you're going to improve customer retention by 10%. Now, nobody wants to actually ask customers, how can we resolve your problem for you? And they say, you know, I say, well, I'm sorry, I can't do that. Goodbye. But the fact is that if a customer even fills out a comment card or tells someone before they leave the establishment that they had an unhappy experience, they are 10% more likely to go back and patronize that organization again. But obviously, if you're on this line and you're learning about customer service and you're looking to put together dynamic programs, then what you're really looking to do is to find ways of encouraging people to complain and satisfying their experience. And when you do both encourage the complaint and satisfy them, the retention rate and the return rate goes up to 77%. And the difference in having a valid, aggressive customer satisfaction program in place that is looking to not only encourage complaints but resolve them quickly and with enthusiasm and empowering frontline people to take care of a customer, you are taking your retention rate of unhappy customers from 36%, or 1 out of 3 people, to 77%, or 3 out of 4 people. And the difference of 1 out of 3 to 3 out of 4 can be the difference in a bottom line impact to profitability by a huge margin in an economy where we are struggling to hang on to every possible customer. And that brings up the next key issue that I'd like to share with you, and that is ways of quantifying customer service so that you are able to demonstrate that your customer service programs and training and efforts really do have a bottom line impact. And over the course of the next couple of slides, I really want to address how do we measure and how do we demonstrate the real impact of a customer satisfaction program. I know that when I'm talking to customers, or talking to employees or management in an organization about handling customer problems, one of the questions I always like to raise is, at your level of authority, what is it that you would like to have greater authority to do in satisfying your customers? In other words, if you were to improve your empowerment authority, what more could you do to satisfy customers? And people will start to identify things that management thought they always had the authority to do. But your people, especially on the front line, are often very well educated that somebody was called in because they gave away too much of a refund, or they handled a problem inappropriately, or they gave the customer what they wanted rather than what the policy calls for. And people shut down, and they decide, I'm not going to get in trouble, or I'm not going to stick my neck out. And so they end up putting up these walls to de-empower themselves. And when you ask, what more could you do? What more do you feel you have the skills and the ability to handle in a customer, rather than refer that customer upline and make them wait for somebody else to get involved to resolve that problem? Very few frontline people are going to give away the house. Very few of them are going to drift outside guidelines and policies. To the most part, you're going to have them asking questions and wanting more training and wanting defined parameters on what their empowerment really represents. But people like to know that they have the authority to take care of a customer, not to put a customer off. Empowerment requires responsive policies so that there's consistency. It requires that people respond quickly. A problem that is delayed by a day or 2 or 3 before somebody in leadership gets back to that customer is a problem that is just simply going to escalate and become even more difficult to satisfy. You got to track the complaints as you're keeping a record of how many complaints fall in similar categories in hopes that you can use that in a continuous improvement process to clear up those complaints and not allow them to continue, remove those causes, and always be looking to which people you are willing to give the authority to improve that level of service. The fourth point I want to cover is probably the most important of all 5 points on the customer service star, and this is developing long-term relationships. To a great degree, long-term relationships are the reason we are in business. Nobody wants to simply be in business to handle a transaction one time and never see that customer again. Any way in which we can develop long-term relationships in a face-to-face situation always ends up building that customer for life. Providing names, getting the customer's name, remembering previous experience, inquire about interests, are all the things that we commonly know about. But making decisions that keep customers for a lifetime and valuing the long-term relationship is a key issue that I found very well represented in a store. For some reason, my PowerPoint stopped here. In a store in West Michigan. This was a group of grocery stores, family-owned, and the owner would get up in front of every group of employees in every store about once a month. And he would constantly encourage them to take care of a customer and do anything that it took to resolve a customer problem, keeping in mind that no one had the authority to chase off a lifetime customer. And then he would go through a little explanation of who a lifetime customer was. The average customer, he said, would come into the store on average about 3 times a week. That customer would end up spending about $100 a week in those 3 visits. You can tell these numbers are not current. They would shop for 50 weeks during the year, taking 2 weeks off for vacation. So at $100 a week, that was about $5,000 a year that each customer was of value to the store. And the customer would live in the neighborhood about 20 years before their kids graduated from high school and they moved to Florida or Las Vegas. And as a result, a lifetime value of a customer was to retain somebody for 20 years at $5,000 a year or value a customer at $100,000. Now let me tell you how this actually translated, because it was a fascinating experience. I was standing in one of these stores a couple of days after Thanksgiving, and I was watching the customer service desk and at the same time glancing out the front window of the parking lot. And here came a customer with a plastic grocery bag, and the way that she was holding this bag and the way that she was strutting into the store, you could tell this was a complaint ready to happen. She marched into the store, strutted across the floor, came up to the customer service desk, took this plastic bag and slammed it on the counter and turned to the woman behind the counter and said, "There's your Thanksgiving turkey. It was tough and dry and it ruined our Thanksgiving dinner, and what are you people going to do about it?" And proceeded to just glare at this woman, daring her to come up with a solution. The young woman behind the counter never faltered. She didn't open the bag. She didn't challenge how she cooked the turkey. She didn't question anything about that Thanksgiving meal. She immediately apologized. "I am so sorry that anything that you purchase in our store in any way damaged your Thanksgiving dinner." She said, "I have 3 solutions for you." She said, "You can go over and get a replacement turkey out of the cooler." She said, "I can give you your money back if you have your receipt." Or she said, "I have the authority of writing you a $20 gift certificate. And if those 3 solutions are not satisfactory," she said, "I'm delighted to call my manager." Customer just melted down. She was expecting a fight. Instead, she got a multiple choice solution. Turned to the woman behind the counter. She said, "You know what? That gift certificate sounds like the best alternative, honey." She said, "Yes, ma'am, that would be a great alternative. You could use that anytime in the store, in this store, any other store." She said, "Just enjoy it." And she wrote that certificate, gave it to the customer, got the bag off the counter. Customer left pleased. And I was absolutely dying to go over there. I walked over and I said, "Judy, that was terrific. You didn't hassle her. You didn't question her. You didn't even look in the bag." I said, "I am so curious. Let's take a look at what's in that bag." We opened up that plastic bag, and folks, there was a carcass inside that grocery bag that had been picked cleaner than any turkey sitting out on the Las Vegas desert for a year. I mean, they ate that turkey right down to the bones. And I turned to the woman and I said, "Do you think she was trying to take advantage of the store?" Young woman in the customer service desk said, "It doesn't really matter. That's not my job to challenge customers. My job is to assure them that we want to keep them as a customer for life." So this equation of thinking of every customer walking in, of being a lifetime valued customer, and what do I do to keep them here so that they do become a $100,000 customer? And it's fascinating. I will take an organization through an exercise of just trying to figure out what is the lifetime value of your customers. And when we're working with not-for-profits and customers are called members, and I ask them, what's the value of a member? I bring this example up because we just did this a couple days ago with an association on the East Coast. And they figured out that the average good member not only pays dues every year, but shows up at events and donates prizes for auctions and for fundraisers, and maybe donates time serving on a committee or serving on a board. And I had an association that said if we can hang on to our members for 15 to 20 years, they've got to be worth $25,000 to us. And I said, great, make up some signs that say the lifetime value of a member in this association is $25,000. Do whatever you would like to satisfy a customer, but don't make a decision that loses a $25,000 member. And that's what you're saying about your customers. It doesn't matter what the lifetime value is. Calculate a number that everybody can live with. Let your senior management team do this at a retreat. Let your employees do it in workshops. But then post that number and then challenge people to find solutions that keep that customer for life. The fifth point on the star is talking about finding ways of exceeding customers' expectations. In this area, you're doing more than the customer expects. Sometimes it can be when you ask a customer how to handle a problem. Rather than try to second guess what will satisfy you, I'm almost encouraged to turn and say, tell me what you would like us to do in this instance that would satisfy you. And if a customer tells me something that I can do, let me think of one more thing that I can do above and beyond that. Absolutely, we can resolve that problem, and why don't I give you a small gift certificate to use on your next visit. That follow-up opportunity to do more than the customer expects not only puts to bed the problem, but it encourages them to feel that you really are looking for ways of keeping them for life. Follow-up notes and calls are a terrific way of letting the customer know we want to do more than you expect. And I emphasize notes because nobody writes notes anymore. I'm not talking about pre-printed computer letters. Those are fine, but everybody opens those up, and as soon as they see them, they check to see that their name was spelled correctly, and they throw it away. But when was the last time that you got a thank you note for being a customer? For years, my wife and I lived in West Michigan, and one year, after a terrific snowstorm, Annie got stuck with a dead battery in her car, and with her cell phone, she called a local towing company, and a gentleman came out, fixed the car, got the car started again, and charged her Visa, her MasterCard, thereby having her address. And about a week later in the mail came a little note that said, please accept my sincere thanks for giving us the opportunity to serve you. Our staff is always here to do anything possible to merit your confidence. Enclosed is my business card. Please call whenever I can be of further service. And it was signed Mark from Grand Rapids Towing. Now, Amy kept this card in her wallet for months, and I finally borrowed it to show it at seminars. She required me to make copies for her purse, for her glove compartment, and for the bulletin board near the kitchen phone. Because for as long as we lived in West Michigan, she was going to call Mark over at Grand Rapids Towing. And I tell you, folks, for the life of me, the only thing I know this guy did was change a battery. But to a great degree, customers remember you when you write notes. Note writing campaigns are great to do in organizations, even to do with a single department, and have fun with it because it differentiates you from other organizations. Look at how these numbers stack up. Suppose that you have a staff of 5 people, and you encourage them to find 2 opportunities every day to write a note to a customer. Most of you probably already have note cards in your supply room with your organization's logo on them. 2 opportunities. They can be a problem that was resolved. They can be a customer that you simply got as a new customer and you want to thank them for coming in. Maybe it was a long-term customer and you want to acknowledge or recognize something that they purchased. Anytime that a note goes to a customer, a business card should be included if at all possible so that they have a way of contacting you and remembering you. You know, those business cards end up on the refrigerator being held by magnets. And that's a great retention factor. But 2 notes by 5 members a day. Over a day's time is going to generate 10 notes. Over a week's time is going to generate 50 notes. Over a year's time is going to generate 2,500 notes. Now, I'm not suggesting that you bury the mailroom or your postage expenses with 2,500 notes a year. But think of the impact that even a small organization of 4 or 5 people can have by writing notes, not only because it multiplies so quickly, but because none of your competition does it. And it's these kinds of things that you can get your people involved with. And especially if they come up with the idea on how they want to do it, or they want to set the goals on how many they want to write, get a chart, let them post it. These are the kinds of things that start to differentiate you from the competition. Got a polling question for you. As a customer in a restaurant, which of the following will keep you from ever returning to that restaurant? A disappointing food experience or a disappointing service experience? Wow, that was an interesting response. The last dozen of you must like eating and chose food, because when this poll started, it was a 90 to 10 ratio, with disappointing service leading the responses. In the end, about 3 out of 4 of you said that a disappointing service experience is going to chase you away from a restaurant more than the 25% that said a food experience. Interesting, because very often that is exactly how people respond. We want to be considered a guest in people's homes. When we walk into another organization's store or place of business, what we want to do is we want to be a customer treated like a guest coming into people's homes. And I've got another example for you. Bear with me, but it's my favorite example of an organization that attempted to figure out not only how to send out notes and ingratiate their customers, but they had a problem trying to figure out who their customer was. This was an animal kennel called the Holiday Kennels. They're located in West Michigan, and they had an opportunity to try to start to send mail to the pet owners to try to encourage them to put the pets into the kennel for the holiday weekends over the coming years. And when they sat down with their staff and we did a little workshop and started looking at customer satisfaction and how we monitor that process, they got into a huge debate over who should receive the mail. And they decided that they would have a more ingratiating experience with their customers if the mail was sent to the pets rather than the pet owners. And with that decision, our golden retriever, Taffy, started receiving mail from the Holiday Kennels. Dear Taffy, it's time again. Remember last year what fun we had at the Holiday Kennels annual Memorial Day picnic featuring all the hot dogs you could eat? Has Bruce made reservations for the Memorial Day weekend? Tell him to hurry. The gang is bigger than ever this year, and space is limited. There's a cover charge to handle the cost of the franks, so bring this card and save $5. Have Bruce call this week. Your buddy, Horace Holiday. Well, I come home, and the kids are sitting on the kitchen floor reading Taffy her mail. Dad, Taffy has been invited to the Memorial Day picnic over at the kennels. And, of course, we were doing some things on the weekend, and Taffy ended up over at the Holiday Kennels for Memorial Day. Howdy, partners. Greetings from Camp Holiday. Are you ready for the last roundup of the summer? Labor Day weekend is almost here, and we want to make sure we have a steak with Taffy's name on it for our all-beef cookout and Western Jamboree. Call your buddy Horace Holiday at reserve a bunk bed and a steak for Taffy now. Well, Taffy spent Labor Day weekend over at the Holiday Kennels. Didn't have any steaks, but we certainly had a perception that there was a rootin' tootin', romping and stomping good time by all the pets. This goes back to when we were in Kuwait. Taffy got this note that summer. Dear Taffy, summer's off to a great start with the nation welcoming home the troops from Kuwait. While there won't be any fireworks at the Holiday Kennels, We will be waving our flags proudly as we salute the troops at our own 4th of July party. We don't want you to miss out on the fun, so please have Bruce make reservations as space is limited. And as a special bonus, if you're bringing this card with you, you'll receive your very own flag to take home. Well, Taffy spent the 4th of July at the holiday kennels, came home with a little American flag attached to her collar, and made us all so proud. But the card that we got in the mail that really blew me away was not addressed to Taffy, but addressed to me. Dear Bruce, please join us at noon on Saturday, April 18th for some holiday fun and bring Taffy to the Holiday Kennel's 2nd annual Easter Bone Hunt. Help your favorite pet look for prizes and treats to take home, and the Easter Bunny will be here to pose for pictures for your pet for a $1 donation to the Humane Society. While you're here, check out the kennels, make your reservations for all the upcoming holiday weekends, and join in the festivities. Please have Taffy bring her leash. Well, you can imagine. I walk home, the kids say, Dad, all the bills are sitting on the counter, but look at this. Taffy got an invitation to the holiday kennels. They're having a special Easter bone hunt. Of course, that Saturday morning, we had to load Taffy up in the car and drive out to the kennels. They gave us a little basket, and we wandered around finding toys and bones all over the front yard of the kennels. And then all of a sudden, here's this guy sitting in a chair with an Easter bunny costume and a sign that says, $1 donation to the Humane Society gets a picture for your pet with the Easter bunny. Well, we obviously had to do that, so we put Taffy in the Easter bunny's lap, and they give us this great little photograph, little Polaroid shot in a paper frame, greetings from Camp Holiday. Now, let me tell you how ludicrous this is. You come to our house, in the living room on the piano is a picture of Annie and I at a black tie benefit, our 2 sons and daughters in their wedding outfits, our grandkids' pictures, and a picture of Taffy and the Dagburn Easter Bunny. And what makes that so ludicrous is, folks, we're Jewish. But you tell me why we're treating dogs like guests when most people in the service industry are treating their guests like dogs. I will tell you that we are really looking at the opportunity of taking customer satisfaction to another level. When you are thinking about taking care of your customers, think about how well people are prepared to enjoy that customer contact, to encourage feedback, to handle problems, to build relationships, and to exceed their expectations. And regardless of the industry or the profession that you're representing, as long as you are dealing with customers and interacting with people to ingratiate them to be customers for life, what you are selling is not a specific product or service. What you are selling is satisfaction. And satisfaction takes your organization to a whole new level when it comes to service. With that, Sarah, I'm going to turn it back over to you and let you handle the latter half of this webinar.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your presentation, Bruce. We do have some questions that have come in, so we'll go ahead and get started on those. Feel free, send in your additional questions that you have, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. So our first question here comes from Rowan, and Rowan is asking about employee burnout. Her question is, what is the best way to deal with employee burnout in seasoned employees?
You know, one of the things that all of us deal with is repetition. And that repetition starts to become mundane, and it creates, you know, burnout. It creates that sense of indifference. Sometimes a change of assignment, sometimes a change of environment, sometimes the need to get people to think differently about the impact that they're having with customers. I know that when I'm dealing with a level of indifference or an organization that has done things the same way for so long, that those customer interactions have become transactions that are routine and that are somewhat done by rote, that to a great degree the process of changing the model, of looking at a customer differently. It's not somebody to just serve. We had a great experience in the retail store when we introduced customer service as a mechanism for better selling. That if a customer walked in the store looking for a tie, and I could sell them a couple of shirts or a sport coat or a pair of slacks and send them out with an outfit, while I was being seen as a great salesperson, the customer walks out and says, I got terrific service. And so we tried changing the whole customer service model from just this mentality of being nice to people to suddenly this mentality of selling them better. And I think that in every organization you have the opportunity of some reinvention. I think reinvention is what changes burnout.
Great, thank you, Bruce. Our next question is from David, and David asks, what would you suggest to replace eye contact when servicing over the phone?
That's a great question, David. I think that when you don't have eye-to-eye contact, intonation becomes that much more important. When I was preparing for this webinar, the last thing that Sarah said to me was smile and breathe. And I have a tendency to get kind of fast when I talk, and slowing down on the phone and smiling is an important consideration. Years ago, we did a study for American Express, and they were attempting to find ways of getting their operators to sound friendlier over the phone. And because they had no eye-to-eye contact, we did a number of different experiments. And the one that I recall that had the best impact is that we put mirrors in front of the operators so that they were looking at themselves when they were talking. And on the mirror it said something to the effect of, smile, you're talking to a real person. And we attempted to get the operators on the phone to recognize that they were not simply talking to a voice or a transaction, but a living, breathing human being. And once again, encouraging them to smile and look at themselves at an eye-to-eye contact in a mirror created an impression on the people receiving that call. And we did a lot of measurements on this particular exercise, but we got substantially higher scores from the customers who believed that they were being treated better on the phone by virtue of what they were hearing in the intonation of that person's voice, and it correlated back almost immediately to those people who had a mirror in front of them and were smiling at themselves and looking at themselves eye to eye. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Bruce. I was not aware that my coaching for my webinars was actually good service, so that was good feedback. I appreciate that.
You are welcome.
We have a couple people asking sort of the same question, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase here a little bit for you. But we have people who are asking for more examples of different types of service and some more background. Can you point them in the direction of different resources that they might be able to use?
One of the things that, if I can be a little bit self-promoting at this point, when we did this third edition of Becoming a Customer Service Star, HRDQ asked me to completely rewrite the facilitation guide. And the facilitation guide that is available with the assessments is full of stories and research examples and different companies that are doing things on a leading edge in the way of customer service. I would first and foremost encourage people to just simply open up that facilitation guide and look at the number of resources. There is a huge bibliography in there of publications and websites and books available that have been written on customer service. There's a very recent one that came out that is dealing with internet sales from I'm drawing a blank. It's a company that sells shoes, and Zappos, Zappos.com, Zappos.com. The president of Zappos just recently wrote a book, and I think that if you Google Zappos.com, you can track it down. We will try before the end of the webinar to get to the title of that book. But it's a small book and it's an easy read, and I think that it gives you some great ideas of a company, leading-edge company in the internet sales arena. And all their sales are on the phone or over the internet. But they're doing some terrific things to reinvent customer service.
Great. And another question here that has come in from Yvette. She says that her customer service background has really stressed that if an issue was not your fault or the fault of the organization, that you should absolutely be empathetic, but not necessarily apologetic. And she wanted to know your opinion about that philosophy.
Well, I would approach it from a different perspective. You know, we can really get into debates with customers over who's at fault or who's right or who's wrong, but in the end result, the real question gets down to whether or not you want to retain the customer or not. I don't know that it is so much a matter of debating with a customer or taking on a customer, certainly apologizing that they had a bad experience or they have a perception that we missed the boat with them is not an admission of guilt. And if that's an easier apology, that's fine. But I would really caution organizations to not allow people to take customer service into the arena of debating, are we right or is the customer right? And based on that, should we only offer them a third of what we would offer them if we had really screwed up? I think the key is really how do you retain customers and what can you do that maximizes that opportunity in every instance.
Great. And our last question, feel free to keep sending in your questions, and Bruce will respond to those by email after the webinar. But our last question was asked a couple different ways. First by Linda, then by Robert, and by David as well. And that question is about the empowerment. How do we offer empowerment when the C-level is tightening their piece in tough economic times? So, you know, how do you ensure that management and the frontline employees are on the same page as far as what boundaries that they have when they're empowering those staff?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because empowerment is a great dilemma when it comes to customer service. And in some ways, you almost need to go back and look at the root of business empowerment. And it took place in the 80s after a recession when many businesses had eliminated frontline supervision as a cost-cutting measure and needed to be able to pass the authority that frontline supervisors had on down line to frontline employees. And they came up with this terminology of empowerment as a mechanism for getting frontline employees to assume greater authority than they had previously when they would refer those situations to a supervisor or the supervisor was walking around and being available. And unfortunately, what took place was that many organizations started seeing empowerment as entitlement and giving the ship away and allowing employees to just do whatever it took to hand a customer a full refund or doing things that many in management would not have seen as appropriate. And I think that it is important to recognize that empowerment requires parameters. And you cannot just simply empower people to take care of the customer and let them automatically jump to the conclusion of how to best do that. Parameters require that there be some collaboration. Very often, management needs to set those parameters. Employee input is fine. When the Marriott organization first introduced empowerment in the late 80s, early 90s, they actually set empowerment goals based on the level of the job position. Someone who was in an hourly position at a front desk had the authority of making up to a 10% adjustment on a person's bill. Someone who was a senior hourly person had the ability of making an adjustment of up to 20%, and they scaled it up, and I think that it was not anyone below a senior manager who had the authority to waive a bill in its entirety. So each level was able to say, here's what I am capable of doing, or if that's not satisfactory, I will call my manager. And it created a kind of a check and balance so that organizations were not feeling that they were having people on the front line give away the ship. But it requires parameters, and parameters are the key silent element that must go with empowerment if you are going to put an empowerment program in place.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bruce. If we did not get to answer your question, you will receive an emailed response directly from Bruce. And feel free to contact us with any additional questions or certainly any feedback on today's webinar. As an exclusive offer, you will receive 20% off any Becoming a Customer Service Star product at our website. It's HRDQ.com. You do want to use the coupon code BCSSwebinar at the checkout. We really appreciate your time, and we hope you found today's webinar informative.